Hello everyone, it's Deal from Firm But Fair Gaming, bringing you a World of Warcraft video. Today we are covering This Week in World of Warcraft, and it's big this week. It is the debut of patch 9.0.5. So there's a lot of changes this week, so let's just go through them and see what we won. So for the adventures, so the Kyrian Covenant Companion, the Phalanx health is increased by 16%. They were a little bit weak before, so they're buffing that up. So this is what is used at the command table. The Necrolord Covenant Companions, so there's a few updates here. Just looking over here, seeing if there's anything that really jumps out. So the big thing here is Rancicia the Dynamo spell effectiveness is increased by 40%. The Assembler spell effectiveness increased by 10%. And the Rattlebag spell effectiveness increased by 20%. So I guess they fixed a few issues where the Necrolord Covenant companions weren't dealing damage reliably. And additionally, a few companions have received an improvement that fits with their purpose. For the Night Fae companions, the Quadron spell is increased by 24%. Blisswing's damage reduction now correctly applies to enemies. Yira, because I'm not going to pronounce that whole thing, health is increased by 16%, and their effective spell effectiveness increased by 50%. Dustleaf gets more health, 20% more, as well as gaining some spell effectiveness increase. And Loth also gets some increased health as well as a damage ability increase. So looks like, and then for Venthyr we have that the Nightblade attack increased by 25%. So they're just balancing out the command table there to balance that out, make it more even for everybody. For the classes, so they did a minor change here for the characters. So the Undead Cloaks will now be as tattered as a Forsaken wearing them. So that's kind of cool. Makes sense. Classes, Ashen Hollow. So this is for Venthyr Paladin. As well as Abomination Limb for the Necrolord DK, Swarming Mist for Venthyr DK, Death's Dew, which is a Night Fae Death Knight, Wild Spirits, Night Fae Hunter, Resonating Arrow, Kyrian Hunter, Ancient Aftershock, Night Fae Warrior. The visual effects will now be less overwhelming to allied players because it was a little bit ridiculous depending on the ability that was being used. It was kind of distracting while you're going through the dungeon. I know that on my Venthyr Paladin, it was like kind of over the top. I get it, reducing that, make it more visually friendly for the group, as well as just some people don't have as good at computers, and so it would affect and cause them to lag a little bit and stuff like that. And at the improper student time, you might find yourself accidentally standing in something, and either your healer may not enjoy it, or you might die as a result, stuff like that. Now, many abilities are now better at avoiding in combat enemies that the player is not engaged with. So, Convoke the Spirits, Starfall, Chain Harvest, Bombardment, and Divine Toll. I noticed that as well, that when I would be convoking or using Divine Toll, it would definitely hit enemies that I wasn't counting on it, and so therefore it was making it less effective. So that's good that they're changing that. Death Knight, for Frost, they fixed an issue that caused Inexorable Assault to consume spell reflection. That was kind of annoying, so that's a good buff there. Or fix, I should say, not buff, because it was never supposed to do that. Unholy, they fixed an issue that caused Unholy Pact to sometimes not hit large raid bosses, so that's good. Covenant abilities, so the Shackle, the Unworthy Kyrian, they increase the damage, and the damage reduction debuff is increased to 8%. It was previously 5%. Abomination Limb, so Necrolord, now correctly deals damage and pulls in enemies while the Death Knight is crowd controlled. Abomination Limb also, it no longer pulls in enemies that are in stealth. So this is actually a nerf, but it's a great correction. So in Arena in particularly, rogues as well as druids or hunters and stealth, like the Death Knight could just pop this ability, and whether they had like sight on them or not, because obviously those other classes were in stealth, it would pull them out of stealth and pull them on top of the Death Knight. So that was incredibly frustrating for rogues. I know from my experience in doing Arena, I had a rogue on my team often, and it was a huge frustration for him. So that fix is definitely going to be a nerf for them in the Arena, which is rightly so. So that'll even it out. Death's Due, so this is Night Fae. The damage reduction debuff and strength buff increased to 2% per stack. It was previously 1%, and it now stacks up to 4 times. It was 8. So the end result is still the same. For Demon Hunter, Havoc, Unbound Chaos. So this is a talent. It is increased to 500% damage increase. It was 300%. So they're going to hit harder. The Covenant abilities, Lycian Decree. So this is Kyrian. The damage reduction is reduced by 10% for the Vengeance Demon Hunters. Fodder to the Flame. So this was Necrolord. It's been redesigned. So now the damaging abilities have a chance to call forth a demon from the Theater of Pain for 25 seconds. It throws glaze. Throw glaze deals lethal damage to the demon, which explodes on death, dealing damage to nearby enemies and healing you for 30% of your maximum health. The explosion deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. So the Hunt Night Fae Covenant ability, damage is decreased by 10% for Vengeance Demons Hunters, and then Sinful Brand, so the Venthyr ability, damage decreased by 10% for the Vengeance Demon Hunters as well. Conduits, they updated them, so Repeat Decree, so for Kyrian base, this is a Kyrian one, the base damage now 15%, it was 25%. Fell Defender now affects Fell Devastation for Vengeance Demon Hunters. So it was the Fiery Brand. And Demonic Parole will no longer engage creatures in combat when Imprison expires. So for balance, some changes here. We have Fury of Elune. So the talent will now deal damage even if the Druid is in cat or bear form. So that's good. I noticed that on my Druid as well. That was ineffective when I wasn't in the correct form. For Restoration, Rejuvenation's periodic healing is increased by 12%, and Wild Growth healing increased by 7%. So that's a big buff there for them. Probably see more Druid healers pop up. I know personally running, I didn't encounter too many, so this will help them out a bit here. And yeah, so that's a great buff for them. Covenant abilities, the Adaptive Swarm, Necrolord, damage and healing increased by 25%, and the effectiveness of periodic effects increased to 25%. So it was 20, so they're getting a little bit buff here. And the effectiveness of periodic effects increased to 35% for Balanced Druids. So they're getting a nice little buff there. For the Conduits, Endless Thirst, so this is the Venthyr, now increases your critical strike chance by 0.8 per stack. At rank 1, it was 0.5, so there you go. They're going to help out there and you'll be able to hit a little bit harder. For a Hunter, they fixed an issue that allowed Hunters to avoid the stated debuff when casting Primal Rage, so they'll fix that. And then another issue was that the cause Feign Death to be cancelled when Hunters opened up their map or used an emote. So they fixed that as well, although I guess using an emote while dead is kind of funny, but anyway. For Beast Mastery, Spitting Cobra, the talent, they've increased the damage by 260% there. For Marksmanship, they fixed an issue where casting Volley. It's a talent right after aim shot that benefited from trick shots, which sometimes not apply the trick shot effect. So they fixed that, so it'll deal the proper damage. For Survival, they fixed an issue that caused Steel Trap to be used while Aspect of the Turtle is active, so you can no longer shoot traps. Covenant abilities, they fixed an issue with where a Resonating Arrow, the Kyrian Covenant ability, could fail to be cast behind your character, so they fixed that. They fixed Death's Chakram, the Necrolord one, where damage increased by 15%. Flayed Shot, Venthyr, so during its duration is increased to 18 seconds. It was previously 14 and cost no focus, and previously it cost 10. And now Flayer's Mark also increases the damage of your next kill shot by 25%. So a nice little buff there as well. Couple Conduit fixes. So they fixed an issue that sometimes caused the Marksman's advantage buff to be removed when another player's Hunter's Mark was applied. So now multiple Hunter's Marks can be applied. They fixed an issue that sometimes cause brutal projections to expire early. So that's more of a timing thing. So good fixes there. For the Mage, the only changes that we have here are the Covenant abilities. So Radiant Spark, which is Kyrian, the damage is increased by 20%. Deathborn, so Necrolord, duration increased to 25 seconds, was 20, and spell power buff increased to 15%, was 10. So they'll be able to do some more damage there. And Mirrors of Torment, which was Venthyr, they changed it so Arcane and now grants a stack of clear casting when a mirror is consumed. Previously it was mana. And now for fire, Fire Blast cooldown reduction is increased to 6 seconds. Previously it was just 4. So not too many changes for the mage, but a couple buffs there. For the monks, so for the Mistweaver, Vivify now costs 3.8% mana. It was 4.1, so this will help them with their mana issues. And now Renewing Mist now costs 1.8. It was 2.2. So what they were doing there is just fixing that because they were finding that the Mistweaver monk was running out of mana quicker than other healers, so just leveling the playing field. For Windwalker, Zune the White Tiger is now vulnerable to Hibernate, Polymorph, and Fear crowd control effects. So now that's more of an arena thing, so they can deal, opposing teams can deal with the Tiger. Touch of Death is now affected by Mastery, so combo strikes. And they fixed a few issues here, so Storm, Earth, and Fire casts to sometimes break nearby enemy stealth. So this is kind of like what was happening with the DK, so they fixed a few things that would unfairly bring things out of stealth. So this is just to even up in the arena. And they've also fixed an issue that caused the White Tiger to be able to target enemies in stealth. So there's a lot of things in this patch that they're fixing that. It was really tough for rogues and other stealth classes in arenas. Rogues in particular, I think, had a tough time. They basically had like a 45-second window to kill you just because there's so many other things that seemed to just bring them out of stealth unfairly, and they couldn't reset the fight when they were against DKs and monks and whatnot. So this will be interesting to see how the next phase of arena goes with them being able to perform as one would have expected originally. They also fixed an issue that caused Tiger Palm to grant an additional stack of Mark of the Crane when each element is active. So when Storm, Earth, and Fire is active. They also fixed an issue that allowed Mark of the Crane to be maintained permanently at maximum stacks while fighting a single target. That's not how it was originally designed, so it's kind of operating outside of that parameter, so they fixed that. And they also fixed an issue where it could prevent Storm, Earth, and Fire spirits from using Fists of Fury, Rising Sun Kick, and Whirling Dragon Punch. So that's just a talent, so they fixed that. They've also fixed an issue for Storm, Earth, and Fire spirits to continue channeling Fist of Fury after the Monk's Fist of Fury channel has ended. So looks like they had a number of things they needed to fix on the Windwalker here. And then lastly, they fixed an issue that could cause Spinning Crane Kicks damage to not be properly increased by Mark of the Crane if targets die when the Monk's Mark is active. So a few there, so that's good. For Covenant abilities, they fixed an issue that caused the Feline Stomp, Night Fae, to not deal damage when used to engage creatures in combat. And they also fixed the Fallen Order, the Venthirs ability. So Fallen Order's Fallen Tiger and Ox adepts have had their stats increased by 20%. Moving on to the Paladin. So for Holy Shock costs now 16% mana. It was 14% before. PvE wise, this is not going to have a huge impact. Going through dungeons and raids, most paladins never run out of mana. They generally end a fight sitting like 90% of their mana, so it's not a big deal there. But what this does do is change things in the arena. So it'll help even that playing field where the Holy Paladin will be more likely or more often run out of mana at the same frequency as other healers were. Previously, like other healers were running out of mana and the Holy Paladin was still sitting, with 50% of their mana left or something like that. So this will even it out in the arena. For Prot, Ardent Defender's Heal now has a visual effect. Before you just had to wait for the number to pop up, and if you don't display numbers, you weren't really seeing it. Covenant abilities, so Vanquisher's Hammer, so Necrolord now generates 1 holy power when used. Some conduits, so they changed the ring clarity, so this is the Kyrian conduit for the Divine Toll. So now there's a longer delay between hits, so before it would kind of happen almost all at once. So now that was kind of annoying during like constant damage as a healer. You'd go to use that and it would just go all at once, and then there would just be constant damage, and it was kind of make it as if the toll didn't really do much. Where it's here, it will be more, there's a little bit of a delay, So it'll go out, it'll have a few different bursts to it, which will help with area damage. Also, additionally, the area effect judgment hits from Divine Toll, so if you're Ret, are no longer reduced by 25% in PvP, and judgment triggered from Ring Clarity is reduced by 33% PvP. So another change was Virtuous Command. It no longer plays an attack animation when it triggers, and they also fixed an issue to cause the additional Templar's Verdict from Templar's Vindication to not deal damage based on the initial Templar's Verdict. Moving down, so for Priest, for Discipline Priest, Spirit Shell now absorbs 80% of the healing done. It was 100%, and the absorption limit is now based on the caster's spell power rather than maximum health. For Holy, Divine Hymn increases healing taken by 4%. It was 10, and for 15 seconds, and previously it was 8. So it stacks up to 5 times. Before there was no stack. So it's kind of this similar. Here, it's going to get the same healing output. So it's going to increase your healing by up to 20% once all the stacks are there. It just, it takes time to stack up. And the buff is they're lasting for 15 seconds where before it was 8. So it's actually a buff. It just takes time to build up. For Shadow Mastery, Shadow Weaving no longer benefits multiple times from damage amplifying effects. So that's a little bit of nerf. You're kind of getting an unfair damage buff there. Now, and also Shadowy Apparitions no longer causes targets to drop stealth if they deal no damage. Again, that goes back to bringing things out of stealth unnecessarily. So, Covenant abilities, the Fey Guardians, the Night Fey. Guardian Fairy now grants 20% damage reduction. Previously it was 10. Wrathful Fairy will now automatically be sent to the closest enemy target if Fey Guardians is used while an ally is targeted. Wrathful Fairies now properly grant resources to the casting priest when there are multiple Wrathful Fairies active on the target. Mind Games Venthyr no longer reverses damage or healing from itself when reflected. Then Conduits, the Fey Fermata. Fey Guardians now leave 80% effective copy of their benefit. It was previously 60. It can no longer be stacked on top of a fairy for double benefit. For Rogue Assassination, so at 56, you now get a new passive, Cut to the Chase. So Envenom extends the duration of your Slice and Dice by up to 3 seconds per combo, per combo point spent. And also Venomous Wounds now restores 8 energy. It was 7 before. Slice and Dice rank 2 has been removed. And they have fixed an issue that prevented Crimson Tempest from triggering Alacrity. They also fixed an issue that allowed Poison Bomb to deal damage to sap targets while not breaking the crowd control effect, which makes sense. If you're sapped, as soon as you take damage, it's supposed to break. They fixed an issue that prevented Envenom's buff from retaining up to 30% of its duration when it was refreshed. So that'll just mean you don't have to apply it as often. For Subtlety, they fixed an issue that caused premeditation to rarely not be applied when entering stealth. So that's good that they fixed that. For some Covenant abilities, so the Serrated Bone Spike from the Necrolord has been redesigned. So now the initial damage is increased by 300% and grants 1 combo point plus 1 per active bone spike after it strikes the target. It is now removed when the target leaves combat and no longer refunds a charge and gets removed when the target is healed to full. So that means you just got to keep your target in combat, which kind of has to do with resetting. This kind of hurts them a little bit where they would vanish and kind of reset the fight because they lose that combo point. But but overall, I think the damage increase is better than it's going to be a buff there for sure. Excuse me. Flagellation there, the Venthyr ability has been redesigned. It no longer costs energy. It was previously 20. The duration is reduced to 12 seconds now. It was 20. Now haste is granted immediately and no longer has a second activation. Its initial damage is increased by 200%, and the additional damage from spending combo points is increased by 160% and deals 1 damage 1 time upon use. It used to be 3 times. So that's a little bit mixed, a little bit of buff and a little bit of a nerf at the same time. I don't play Rogue enough to know how that's going to play out, if it's really a buff or nerf. I think it kind of breaks even there based on what I'm reading. They fixed an issue that caused Echoing Reprimand, the curing ability to apply Find Weakness for non-subtlety rogues when cast from stealth. It was never intended to do that, so they fixed that. They also fixed an issue that prevented serrated bone spikes, the Necrolord, from initial damage being dealt as a critical strike. And they fixed an issue that prevented serrated bone strikes, again, the Necrolord bleed debuff from being counted towards the envenom damage bonus from Doomblade. So that's a legendary power. We also have another one, the bone spikes damage is now correctly increased by the Assassination Mastery, the Potent Assassin. So there we go. So that's a nice little damage buff they'll get from that. And fix an issue that prevented critical strikes with serrated bone spikes. The initial damage was generating an additional combo point with Steel Fate. So that has been fixed. And then lastly, Broadside, so an Outlaw talent now correctly causes Sepsis to generate an additional combo point. And then for the Conduits, Lashing Scars now causes 4 additional lashes. It was 2 before. This will now allow the rogue to start with at 5% haste upon activation. And they also fix an issue that caused the count the odds buff to be removed when any roll the bones enhancements expire. So a couple fixes there. For Shaman, so Chain Lightning damage is increased by 35% and Lightning Shield damage increased by 415%. So those are pretty big. Elemental, so the Earth Shock damage is increased. Earthquake damage is increased. So those are some nice buffs right there. So Earth Shock increased by 30, Earthquake by 70, Lava Beam by 35. They already hit surprisingly hard, so that's a nice little buff there for their damage. Enhancement, Lava Lash damage is increased by 40%. The Stormkeeper talent now increases Chain Lightning by 300%. Was 2 Lightning Bolts by 150, so that evens out. Just a little bit of redesign how it works. Stormbringer can now correctly trigger from Ice Strike, which is a talent, and Sundering, another talent. And they fixed an issue where Stormkeeper and the Maelstrom weapon were both increasing the damage of Chain Lightning at the same time. So a little bit of a correction there. Restoration, Lava Burst damage reduced by 10%. And they fixed an issue where Earthen Wall, the totem, could absorb more damage than intended when an area damage spell hit multiple allies. It's a little bit of a nerf there. Covenant abilities, the Vesper Totem, the curing ability, the damage and healing is now increased by 25%. The Fey Transfusion, the Night Fey ability, the damage increased by 25%. The healing from damage conversion increased to 60%, so it was 40%. The heal radius increased to 20 yards, was 12. So that's a nice one there. Some damage increase, as well as some healing in the range, so that's a nice one there. Primordial Waves, the Necrolord enhancement, Lightning Bolt effect now deals 150% damage. It was 100%. And they fixed an issue that caused Primordial Wave, the Necrolord ability to not be usable on allies that are in mercenary mode. So they fixed that. And then they have a couple Venthyr ones here. Chain Harvest, the damage and healing increased by 15% for Elemental and Restoration to the Shamans. And will now light up on the action bar when players can cast it instantly through Maelstrom weapons. Sorry. So that'll help them out there. That actually sounds like some nice buffs there for Elemental Shaman. I almost wish I had one. Or just Shamans in general, actually. That's pretty nice there. For Warlock, Curse of Tongues now lasts 1 minute. It was 30 seconds before, and lasts 20 seconds against enemy players. It was 12. That's a nice buff for them. Unfortunately for me, that'll be annoying, but good for them. Affliction, Malefic Rapture no longer causes targets to drop stealth if it deals no damage. So the theme so far I noticed a little bit in regards to the stealth thing is they're fixing all these things that were bringing things unnecessarily out. So a lot of rogues and druids and whatnot will be quite happy about that. Seed of Corruption now properly deals damage and applies corruption if the warlock is crowd controlled when the seed detonates. I guess I missed right there. The Malefic Rapture will no longer waste the soul shard if there are no targets within line of sight when the cast is completed. Well, that's good for them. Demonology, summon Dreadstalkers, Demonic Tyrant, Vile Fiend, Nether Portal Demons, and Grimoire. The Felguard will now listen to primary pet commands. Additionally, we have Call Dreadstalker's attack power is increased by 10%, and Dread and Dreadlash damage is increased by 10% as well. For Destruction, Mastery, the Chaotic Energies now properly increases the damage of Corruption. Good there. For Covenant abilities, Scouring Teeth, the Curing one now requires Warlock to be facing its target, which is what you have to do when most spells are being cast. Decimating Bolt, the Necrolord bonus damage from the target's missing health increased to 100%. It was 60% before. Nice there. Impending Catastrophe, the Venthyr ability, the damage while moving towards its target has been increased by 10% and explosion damage increased by 15%. Again, Impending Catastrophe no longer damages totems in its path to the target. Warrior fixed an issue that allowed Intervene to be applied to targets under the effect of Cyclone. You shouldn't be able to target them, so that's a nice fix there. Fury fixed an issue that prevented the Whirlwind buff to not be applied to the Warrior Whirlwind if Whirlwind was cast during charge. Protection, damage of all abilities increased by 10%. Damage of Thunderclap increased by an additional 10%. That'll help with their threat generation as well as just damage in general in the dungeons, so that'll be good there. Covenant abilities, so Conqueror's Banner, so Necrolord has been redesigned. Brandish the banner, granting 400 mastery and 30% increased movement speed to you and your 2 nearest allies, preventing movement speed from being reduced below 100%. The cooldown is now 2 minutes, it was 3. Duration is now 15, it was 20. And the rage generation is now 4 per second for Armed Prot and 6 for Fury. That's almost like having a free Blessing of Freedom there for your party. Conduit's Veteran's Repute no longer causes Conqueror's Banner to grant stacks of glory. Okay, now for Covenants. This is a very big patch. So for Covenant ability, Fleshcraft has been redesigned. So now it forms a shield. Form a shield of flesh and bone over 3 seconds. It casts 4 seconds, or it took 4 seconds to cast before. That absorbs damage equal to 40% of your maximum health for 2 minutes. While channeling, your damage taken is reduced by 20%. Passive effect, moving near an enemy's corpse consumes their essence to reduce Fleshcraft's cooldown by 1 second. That is also unkickable, so that's you couldn't interrupt that, but that's interesting there. The slain creatures within the Plaguefall dungeon will now grant their buffs when their corpses are consumed by Fleshcraft's passive effect. It was when Fleshcraft was used on the corpse, so now it'll just pick it up if it's active. For Soulbind's Volatile Solvent, so Plague the Visor Marileath now triggers when Fleshcraft's passive effect consumes a corpse essence. It was when it was cast. Resourceful Fleshcrafting has been redesigned. When Fleshcraft's passive effect consumes a corpse, the cooldown of Fleshcraft is reduced by an additional 1 second. The Anima Conductor, Flowing Power, House of Rituals. Skeletal Command now summons a skeleton when Fleshcraft passive effect consumes a corpse. This effect has a 5-second cooldown between summoning skeletons. For Night Fae, spirits within the Queen's Conservatory are eager to return to life and will now automatically provide players with the reward without having to speak to them first. And then they fixed an issue with the Soulbinds that sometimes causes players to die through Podtender, the Dream Mover, if the lethal blow had a large overkill. For Venthyr, the Ember Court, so permanent RSVPs. Guests who have reached best friend status will now give you a permanent RSVP. The permanent RSVP will allow all characters on your account to invite that guest to future Ember Courts without completing their RSVP quest again. So that's pretty helpful. Tamal and Sinful now sells a bind on account book at Exalted with the Ember Court. The book will teach you your Dredger Butler how to handle the cleanup and restocking quests that follow the Ember Courts. That's nice. One-time reputation items from Tamal and Lady Ilinka will no longer appear once learned. And Droman's RSVP no longer requires a player to venture to Bastion and Meldraxxus for items. So just tidying up some, I guess, annoyance there where you had to just do a bunch of things repeatedly. So that'll make it much more smoother, so that's nice to see. And then they fixed the Soulbind issue that allowed Service and Stone to be parried. So now we're getting into the dungeons and raids. So Castle Nathria. So they closed the Hall of Fame, or I guess the main part there, and are now opening up Mythic Castle Nathria to be able to be done cross server, starting starting after the next patch reset. They've also made an additional change here. So the Council of Blood. So the Fury effect has been reduced by 15% on heroic and mythic difficulties, so nerfing it there, making it a little bit easier to complete. Veteran Stone Guard have had their health reduced by 10% on mythic, and they've also had their damage reduced by 10% on all difficulties. As well as the Stone Guard's Sin Touch Blade now casts less frequently on all difficulties. They've also reduced the damage of the Dancing Fever by 10%. Dancing Fools have had their health reduced by 10% on Mythic, and they've reduced the damage of Soul Spikes by 5% on all difficulties. So they're just opening it up to everybody and making it easier for everybody to get through for those that haven't yet. Into the dungeons, Halls of Torment. So the loyal Stoneborns that you could now charm as a Ventier player, you now get them for 45 seconds. It was 30 seconds before. Their damage is now cut in half, so it's reduced by 50% while charmed. And their boon duration that the buff they were giving to players is now 45 seconds instead of 30. So a little bit of a DPS decrease there, but we do get a little bit more damage out of them. Like it's not a true 50% because we get to hang on to them for another 15% longer. So a little bit damage reduction there, but we get the boon from them as well for 15 seconds longer. For Sanguine Depths, the anima cages now persist for 1 minute after activation. It was 45 seconds before. And while active, the Sinful Boon is applied to players when an enemy is slain nearby. It was only certain types before, now it's any enemy, and the duration is increased to 75 seconds. It was 60 before. And they moved one of the anima cages away from a patrolling chamber sentinel. So that'll be after, I think I can see where it is. There's always that padding gargoyle, and there's the cage was just across a bridge, so they might have brought that back so you can use that, and because it was getting skipped 90% of the time. Theater Pain, Necrolord's Chosen Covenant perk now has a duration of 6 minutes. It was 5 minutes before. In affront to the challengers, Zira the Underhanded has been disabled on Mythic difficulty and removed from the Dungeon Journal. So that was the one that would jump out and occasionally stun a member of the party, and you had to stun them to break it. Like you had to stun Zira to break it, so Zira is gone. Mythic Dungeon Keystones has been reworked. So previously, whenever you completed a Mythic Dungeon, so if you did, for an example, like a 15, the next week, when the vault became available, you would get your key and it would be 1 level lower. So if you did a 15, it would become a 14. They've reworked it now so that if you do a 15 and you complete it in time, next week when you go and to do get your key, it will be a 15. But if you did a 15 but didn't complete it in time, then the next week when you got it, it would be a 14. So Plaguefall, so Domina, Venom Blade, so the Brute Assassins no longer trigger the Necrotic Affix, so that's nice there. And for Sanguine General Call's Gauntlet, the Stonewall Gargons no longer trigger the Necrotic Affix, so that'll make it easier for healers. Items and rewards. So what they're doing here is they are adding a Valor system. So basically, it was kind of frustrating to be doing Mythic Pluses, and the most you could get, like you were basically doing them just for the weekly item out of the vault, because even at the highest level, the item level was like 213 or something like that. It wasn't that high. And so basically now they have a Valor system that will help you upgrade your items. Unfortunately, it only starts on items that are now dropping after this patch. So basically you can upgrade a 200 item to a 207, and like as kind of like they do in PvP where you need certain rating, now you need certain accomplishments in order to upgrade them further. So the initial item starts at the 200. So then to get upgraded to 207, you gotta complete the Keystone Explorer achievement, which is basically complete all 8 dungeons on a Mythic 5 or higher within time. To get to 213, you have to complete all 8 at 10 or higher, and to get up upgrade to 220, you have to complete all dungeons at 15 or higher within time. All these have to be within time. So that helps there. That'll be nice. It'll give you different things to go for in order to continually upgrade your items, and it'll be nice to get up to a 2 out of 20 item level just by doing mythics as well. And also we have here completing a mythic keystone dungeon after the timer is ended now rewards a second item. But it'll be slightly lower, so it was kind of frustrating where you kind of failed your time and you only got the one item. So now you're going to get two. You're going to get one at the actual item level of the dungeon that you're completing, and then one that is one tier below. So for example, if it was going to be a 200 item level, you get one 200 and then one 197. The Great Vault has been changed. So now loot requirements is that you defeat 3, 6, and 9 raid bosses. It was 3, 7, and 10 before. Potency conduits can now drop in Castle Nathria. And once players reach 40 renown with their covenant, the weekly quest to gather 1,000 anima will now award you with 1,500 gold. So that's nice, just give you some extra money there. Once players have recruited the maximum amount of souls for the covenant, the weekly quest to rescue souls from the mob will now reward you with 500 anima. Rhinestone sunglasses can now be used in transmogrification and will appear in your collection once found. Vendor prices for items below 75 item level have been adjusted. The Lightless Force weapon enchant no longer targets out of combat or crowd controlled enemies. The Hunger of the Pack trinket now grants a speed stat instead of the movement speed percentage. And the barrier generator toy can no longer be used in PvP instance. They also changed the some of the legendaries here. So for the Death Knight, Blood, so Pheromones now grants 10% haste, while inside your Death and Decay it was 8% before. Crimson Rune Weapon now causes Dancing Rune Weapon to generate 5 Bone Shield charges and reduces the cooldown of Dancing Rune Weapon by 5 seconds. It was previously 3. Vampiric Aura now increases the duration of Vampiric Blood by 3 seconds and grants a 5% leech for the duration. And then lastly, Gorefiend's Domination now also grants 4 to 5 runic power when Vampiric Blood is used. Unholy, the reanimated Shambler explosion damage is increased by 5% and now procs approximately every 1.75 minutes. It was 1.5 before. So every minute 45. Demon Hunter, Fell Bombardment's buff duration has been increased to 40 seconds. It was 30 seconds before, and the chance to trigger is increased by 5%. Dark Lair Medallion's chance to trigger increased to 40%. It was 20%, and now also refunds the fury of the casted Eye Beam or Fell Devastation. For Havoc, Burning Wound damage over time, the damage is increased by 100%, and Immolation Aura damage increased by 65%. It was previously 50%. Nice little buff there. For Vengeance, the casted Eye Beam from Collective's Anguish summoned ally now always deals critical strikes. And Spirit of the Darkness Flames Fiery Brand instant damage increased by 20%. It was previously 15%. Wow, that sentence was a mouthful. For Druid, so here we have Pharaoh. So Cat Eye Curio now restores 30% energy. It was 25%. Frenzy Band now reduces the cooldown of Berserk by 0.3 seconds per combo point. Generating ability was 0.2 before, so it'll be up more frequently. During Berserk, combo point generation abilities cause the target to bleed for 150% of the damage. It was 100% before. So that's nice, a little bit of damage burst there. Legacy of the Sleeper's Berserk, so this is for Guardian. Description now notes that the Druid is immune to crowd control while active. Restoration, Verdant Infusion extends the duration of your heal over time effects on the Swiftman target by 10 seconds. It was previously 8. For Beastmaster, Dire Command has a 30% chance to trigger. It was 20% before. Relic Stalker's Piercing Fangs critical damage is increased to 35%. It was 20%. Flamewalker's Cobra Sting now has a 50% chance to trigger. It was 25%. Quapla Iridan War Order now resets the cooldown of Kill Command. It was previously just reduced it by 5 seconds. And it has an additional passive effect where Barb Shot deals 10% increased damage. For marksman, surging shots now causes rapid fire to deal 35% additional damage. It was 25. Eagle Talon's True Focus now also increases the duration of True Shot by 3 seconds and reduces all focus cost by 25. It was 50% before. Serpent Stalker's Trickery no longer triggers Wild Spirits, so that's the Knife-Eye ability. Survival, Latent Poison Injectors damage increased by 15%. So basically, overall, they're just increasing a lot of the other legendaries that weren't seeing any love, so trying to get more of them into the meta, into the use. And that goes for all classes, not just hunters. So into Mage, so this disciplinary command increases critical strike damage by 20%. It was 15. Expanded potential procs per minute increased to 2. It was 1.66. Arcane Harmony damage per stack increased to 8%. It was 7. And the effect stacks up to 18 times. It was 15 before. Fire, Molten Skyfall now calls down, sorry, can't talk apparently, calls down a meteor after casting 18 fireballs or pyroblasts. It was 25, so that'll be up more often. Sun King's Blessing now requires consuming 8 hot streaks. It was 12, and grants combustion for 6 seconds, and previously it was 5. For Frost, Cold Front now calls down a frozen orb after casting 30 frostbolts or flurries. It was 60 before, so that's a big there, so now it'll be up twice as often. And Freezing Winds now trigger for Fingers of Frost every 2 seconds. It was 3 before. For Monk, Shahal's Might now causes Tiger Palm to have a 40%. Was previously 10 to deal 300% of damage. Was previously 250. So that's pretty big there for that ability. Brewmaster, Mighty Pour now causes Celestial Brew to increase your armor by 50%. It was previously 25 for 8 seconds, and it was 7. It causes Purifying Brew to have a 35% chance not to consume a charge, which was previously 25%. So that's pretty big there. I noticed that monks seemed more spiky while healing them, so that'll give them some damage mitigation. Mistweaver, Clouded Focus, healing increased by 20%. It was previously 15, and mana cost reduced by 20%. It was previously 15. So again, this is another one that'll help them heal a little bit more and retain mana better. Windwalker, Zune's Battle Gear, critical strike chance increased by 50%. It was previously 30. And Fist of Fury cooldown reduced by 5 seconds was 2.5. Paladin, Vanguard's Momentum increases holy damage by 4%. Was previously 3 and for 10 seconds, and it was previously 8. Of Dusk and Dawn, the buff duration increased to 12 seconds, was previously 8 seconds, and Blessing of Dusk damage reduction increased to 4%, was 3. For Holy, Inflorescence of the Sunwell increases infusion of light effects by 30%, so it was previously 20. Shadowbreaker, Dawn of the Sun buff increased to 8 seconds, was previously 6. Murad's Dying Breath, the healing bonus to the Light of the Martyr no longer increases self-damage taken. Additionally, Murad's Dying Breath now causes all Light of the Martyr self-damage to be dealt over 5 seconds. Just changing how that one works a little bit. For protection, Ardent Defender's Sanctum has been redesigned. When Ardent Defender saves your life, it restores 40% additional health. When Ardent Defender expires without saving you from death, its remaining cooldown is reduced by 40%. And they fixed an issue where Ardent's Protector Sanctum that caused Ardent Defender cast to put nearby protection paladins Ardent Defenders on cooldown. They also fixed an issue that caused the Magistrate's Judgment to be consumed when casting a free Word of Glory through Shining Light. For Ret, Final Verdict damage has been increased by 15%, and the Magistrate's Judgment now grants the proper amount of Crusade stacked when Holy Power is spent while under its effect. For Priest, Cauterizing Shadows healing increased by 36% and can now critically strike. Discipline, Cauterizing Shadows now functions with Mastery, the Grace ability. And Kiss of Death reduces the cooldown of Shadow Word Death by 12 seconds. It was previously 8. For Holy, Divine Image now casts Searing Light when Shadow Pain or Mind Games are used, and casts Holy Nova when Unholy Nova is used. Additionally, if the priest is crowd controlled while Divine Image is active, the image will cast single turret healing spells on nearby low health allies. Divine Image, the spell mirroring cooldown removed, so example, queuing a Shadow or Death after a Holy Fire will now trigger two Searing Lights. Flask concentration buff, duration increased to 20 seconds, it was 15. And Measured Contemplation is now cleared upon starting an arena match. So you can't take that buff in with you. Shadow, Painbreaker Psalm generates up to 30 insanity. It was 20 and now functions with Death and Madness, which is a talent. Painbreaker Psalm will now grant insanity as Shadow or Death kills the target. And Shadow Flame Rift's damage has been greatly increased by 40%. For Rogue, Mark of the Assassin now only affects auto attack and rogue abilities critical strike chance. Tiny Toxic Blade now causes Shiv to deal 500% increased damage. It was 350. Essence of Bloodfang damage has increased by 30%. And now, Assassination Doomblade now deals an additional 45% bleed damage. It was previously 30. Fix an issue that caused Doomblade's bleed effect to incorrectly be affected by armor. So that was unnecessarily mitigating it. Dustwalker's Patch reduces Vendetta's cooldown for every 30 energy you expend. It was previously 50. For Outlaw, Guile Charm increases your damage dealt by 15%. It was 10 and now lasts up to 12 seconds. It was all for 10 seconds. Greenskin's Wickers increase the damage of your next pistol shot by 300%. It was previously 200%. And Concealed Blunderbuss now has a chance to fire your next pistol shot 3 additional times. Was 2. Subtlety, the Rotten now causes Backstab to deal 50% increased damage. It was 30. And Deathly Shadow increases all damage dealt by 20%. Was 15% for 15 seconds. It was 12. For Shaman, Elemental, the Echoes of Great Sunray now causes Earthquake to deal 120% additional damage. It was 175, so a bit of a nerf there. For enhancement, Legacy of the Frostwitch now causes Storm Strike to deal 30% increased damage, was 15%, and the debuff from Doom Winds now persists through death. Restoration, Jonat's Natural Focus increases the next chain heal by 20%, it was 10. And Spirit Walker's Tidal Totem now reduces mana cost of Healing Wave and chain heal by 40%, was 25. For Warlock, for Affliction, Malfic Wrath duration is increased to 10 seconds. It was 8, and the damage per stack is increased to 35%. It was 25. Wrathic Consumption duration increased to 30 seconds. It was 20, and the periodic damage is increased to 6%. It was 5. And now Wrathic Consumption now properly increases the damage of Scouring Ties, which was the Curian ability, the periodic effect of that. For Demonology, Implosive Potentials, Haste buff duration increased to 12 seconds. It was 8. Blade Spider's Burning Core increased the damage of Demon Bolt by 15% per stack. It was 8, so that almost doubles the damage there. Grim Inquisitor's Dread Calling increased to 4% per stack. It was previously 3. And for Destruction, Madness of the... Oh wow, not even going to try to say that. Madness, the duration of Madness has increased to 4 seconds. It was previously 3. And Embers of the Diabolic now properly generates 6 soul shards fragments when dealing a critical strike with Incinerate. For Warrior, for Arms, Enduring Blows chance to apply the Colossal Smash effect is increased to 25%. It was 15. And the duration is increased to 6 seconds. It was previously 5. Battlelord now triggers from Overpower. It was previously Slam and reduces the rage cost of your next Mortal Strike by 15, which used to be 12. Exploiter's Mortal Strike damage bonus increased to 50%, was 25, and the damage bonus from Venthyr Warriors increased to 36, was 18. Nice little buff there on the Mortal Strike there. For Fury, Cadence of Fuji. Duration increased to 12 seconds, was previously 8. Will the Berserker duration increased to 12 seconds. It was previously 8 as well. Reckless Defense now triggers from all Rampage hit. Before it was just critical strikes. And the remaining cooldown of Recklessness and Enrage Regeneration by 1 second was 3. So it triggers off everything, but the amount that it reduces the cooldown has been reduced from 3 to 1. For Prot, Reprisal has been redesigned. Charge and interview grant you shield block for 4 seconds. Revenge, and it generates 20 rage. Unbreakable Will now also grants an additional charge of shield wall. And Seismic reverberation damage increased to 75%, was previously 40%. Now we have a few PvP changes. So they just couple little ones here. So they resized the flag in Warsong and Twin Peaks. The Horde flag was a little bit smaller, so now it's the same size as the Alliance flag, so very minor there. Focused Assault and Brutal Assault now increase damage taken by 10% and reduce healing by 5% per stack in Warsong, Twin Peaks, and Eye of the Storm. So that basically if you're carrying the flag, you're going to get hurt more, take more damage, receive less healing. Deepwind Gorge, the side capture points now spawn 14 seconds after the battleground has begun, and the central flag spawns 18 seconds after battleground has begun. A quicker start to that one. They fixed an issue that caused battle flags to not be usable in Wintergrasp or the Ashen Battlegrounds. Bloodlust, Hero, Time Warp, Primal Rage are no longer usable during Battleground preparation phase, because there's some where people just come in and pop that, and then it's 10-minute cooldown, and you can't, and it persists through death, so you just couldn't do it after that. So it's kind of annoying. Seething Shore has temporarily been removed while they investigate an issue with its starting area. Players below max level now earn 30% less honor from Battlegrounds. This should not affect how many experience points are awarded from Battlegrounds, so you still get the same amount of XP, just less honor. The rating system has been adjusted to increase 2v2 ratings relative to other brackets. The effect of this change will be gradual over the remainder of the season, but persist next season. For the Ashen Battleground, so the maximum player count per faction is now 35. It was 30. Increase the reinforcements from 175 from 150. And they both factions now have easier access to star root tubers and songflowers. Both these tasty treats will now spawn alongside each other in the Dark Woods and Root Den. Artifact fragments cost to summon Cronus and Fangirl reduced to 1,500, was 3,000, which was ridiculous. I don't know, many people didn't bother to even do that, so maybe that'll be a thing now. Horde and Alliance Tower Mages are now worth 30 reinforcements when slain. They used to be 50. Horde and Alliance Tower Mages have had their spells adjusted. So for Alliance, Northwind Rin now deal 15% of the target's health and frost damage. Frostbolts now deal 8% of their max health. Volley does 15% of max health. And they no longer cast Mass Polymorph. For the Horde, Fireball now deals 8% max health. Combustion 15%. Ignite does 1%. Living Bomb is 5% max health. And the Explosion does 15% of the max health. It no longer causes a knockback. And Magna Blast cast by Jerome Summon Lava Fury now deals 5% of the target's damage. Or sorry, health, yeah, of their health and damage. For Isle Conquest, they increased the health of the Glaives, increased the health of the Alliance and Horde Commander by 50%. Demolisher health increased by 25% and Catapult by 100%. And so basically the siege equipment was dying too quickly with the gear everybody had, so they're buffing that up. And the amount of siege damage required to break down walls has been increased by 20%. That'll make that just last a little bit longer. I kind of wish they didn't do that one. Wintergrasp. So this is big here. So the Wintergrasp, you used to start as an attacker with only 2 bases. You're now going to start with Broken Temple and Sunken Ring. So now you start with all 4 on the outside. So that's pretty big, because before, if you were a defender, it was basically auto win. So this will change that. Be interesting to see if it's going to be more 50-50. The walls, their health has been reduced by 20%, so that'll make it easier to kill towers as well in the gates and get in, because it was pretty impenetrable before. And now also to compensate now for defense, if you destroy a tower, you reduce 8 minutes off the match, and where it used to be 5. Siege Engine Steam Rush ability now deals 20 to 35% of a player's health. Before it was almost 30 to 45%. The Demolisher's Hurl Boulder ability deals 20 to 25. Previously it was 36. Yeah, it was pretty, you got hit by anything, like basically you were dying to the siege equipment really, really easily. And now Demolishers will now consistently deal seal damage when striking fortresses and the walls and towers. After 5 minutes, all players in the battleground who do not have a rank, including players who join late, will be granted the rank of Corporal. So it'll let you at least get into a catapult. So classes, the Ashen Hollow, so for Venthyr Paladin, Spirit Bastion, Kyrian Warrior, Resonating Arrow, Kyrian Hunter, Wild Spirits. Their visual effects are more easily distinguishable when cast by enemy players. So that'll help out there because you could be standing in things and not realize it. Death Knight removed the stun when summoning the temporary ghoul version of Raised Dead. And the Satiated debuff from Rune of Sanguination is now removed when entering PvP instances, so you're coming in with a debuff, which was unfair. For Demon Hunter, Vengeance corrected an issue that was casting Illidan's Grasp, causing Illidan's Grasp recast effect to not toss the target. So fix that. Druid, Convoke the Spirits, can no longer cast Full Moon and Feral Frenzy for Guardian, or Restoration Druids when engaged in combat with enemy players. Hunter, Roar of Sacrifice can no longer be cast while the hunter's pet is dead or crowd controlled. Mage, Ice Form, is no longer on the global cooldown to match Icy Veins. The ability it replaces. Okay, so that's nice. So you can pop that off the GCD. Icy Propulsion Conduit now correctly functions with Ice Form. Nether Precision and Arcane Prodigy Conduits now correctly function with Arcane Empowerment. For Paladin Holy, so Divine Vision now reduces the cooldown of Aura Mastery by 1 minute. Previously, it granted Shadow Resistance, which was nice, so that's a bit of a nerf there. But it does mean you can use Aura Mastery more often. Ultimate Sacrifice now reduces the damage of the duration of Blessing of Sacrifice to 6 seconds, so this is a big nerf. Before, it would you could make your DPS immune for 12 seconds because all damage got redirected to you, so now not only is it shorter, well, now it's shorter, so that's pretty big, down to 6 seconds. And they fixed an issue that sometimes caused Cleanse the Weak to not dispel multiple debuffs. I did notice that, so I stopped using it. For Prot, Steed of Glory will now grant immunity to roots and snares. It was an all crowd controlling effects. Oh, before it was all crowd controlling, sorry, I misread that. And then they fixed an issue that prevented the Royal Decree conduit from affecting Guardian of the Forgotten. For Ret, they fixed an issue that was causing the resurrection bonus from Ultimate Retribution to not be applied to the Paladin when an ally died. For Priest, Greater Fade is now cancelled when players attempt to capture PvP objective. Mass Dispel no longer cancels Greater Fade. Shadow, Greater Fade is no longer cancelled when Mind Bob triggers or Shadow Crash talent deals damage. Rogue, Outlaw, Control is King can no longer override an Adrenaline Rush with the longer duration. Shadowy Duel can no longer, and for subtleties, Shadowy Duel can no longer be cast on targets that have immunities active, such as Ice Block or Divine Shield. Shaman, Hex now interrupts players that are channeling to capture a PvP objective if the player is susceptible to Hex. Warlocks, Amplify Curse, cooldown reduced to 30 seconds, it was 45. Casting Circle no longer causes Unending Resolve to stop granting its interrupt immunity. Demon Armor increases armor by 160%, was 90, so that's going to make them harder to kill. Affliction, fix an issue where Rapid Contagion could be used while under the effects of crowd control abilities. For Warrior, Barbarian, the PvP talent no longer resets the cooldown of all heroic leap charges when used with Leaper, the legendary effect. Arms fixed an issue that caused War Banner to expire early if there were multiple War Banner actives. Exploiter will now, legendary effect, will grant 25% bonus mortal strike damage per stack while in combat with enemy players, was 50%. For Venthyr Warriors using Condemn, it will grant 18% bonus mortal strike damage per stack while in combat with enemy players. It was previously 36. That was hitting ridiculously hard. For Prot, fix an issue that caused Overwatch to be incorrectly consumed by reflecting damage procs in area of effect spells. So that covers PvP. For the Maw, the new account-wide unlock has been added that reveals teleport nodes on all the walkable chains in Torghast, so you can quickly cross the chains and no longer have to face your fear of heights. They reduce the health and amount of Anima Devourers required for stage 1 of the Winged Soul Eater's hunt. For Torghast, each wing is now available before embarking on any given Torghast run. To better increase your odds of success, recommended item level will now be displayed when selecting each layer, which layer of difficulty to attempt, and they reduce the amount of enemies on multiple floors. For Anima powers, they've added Kyrian, Parliament Stone, increased speed by 50%, and now also increases dodge chance by 25. Can be obtained 1 time. It was 2. Necrolord, new Anima powers, Desolate Chitin. Fleshcraft absorbs 50% more damage, can be absorbed 3 times. Malevolent Stitching increases your primary stat by 20%. It was 8% and is now uncommon rarity. It was rare. Can be attained 1 time, used to be 3. Musophobic Femur has been removed. For Night Fae, new Anima power, Frigid's Wild Seed. So it's an epic. Activating Soul Shape stuns enemies within 12 yards of the departure and destination for 6 seconds. Can be, so you can get that once. They also have another new Anima power, Ethereal Wild Seed. Soul Shape and Flicker heal you for 20% of your maximum health. Can be attained twice. Clean Fog and Crystallized Dreams have been removed. So that replaces, so those two replace that. For Venthyr, Gnarled Key reduces Door Shadows cast time by 20%, was 10, and it reduces its cooldown by 6 seconds per stack, was 3, and stacks up to 5 times. Okay, Death Knight. There's a lot of things here. So a new Anima power, Entropic Pool. Dealing damage with Death and Decay increases damage you deal to the target by 2%, and it's a stackable ability. New power, Bone Borer. Death Grip reduces the target's damage to you by 20% for 10 seconds and animates a risen Skulker or Magus of the dead for 1 minute. Damage dealt by minions summoned by Bone Borer and Bone Harvester have been significantly increased. Occult Emitter has been redesigned. It now increases runic power generation by 100% while affected by your anti-magic shell or anti-magic zone. Monstrous Concoction has been redesigned. Now increases damage and attack speed for you and all your minions by 10% for 8 seconds whenever you cast Death Coil. Exterminator has been redesigned. Now gives you 2 additional max charges of Death Grip, and killing a Maw Rat resets all charges. Stacks twice. Dark Reaver's Ward now also increases anti-magic shell duration by 3 seconds and no longer increases the spell damage. Reduction of anti-magic zone. Dark Reaver's Lens spell reflection now also applies to anti-magic shell. Creeping Decay now grants Death and Decay an additional charge rather than 10% damage reduction. Death Turf now also reduces damage you take from enemies by 10% while your Death and Decay are active. Unbreakable Cuffs now also increase physical and frost damage you deal to affected enemies by 15% and no longer increases the duration of Chains of Ice. Blood Tinged Poker now increases Sacrificial Pact by 400%, it used to be 300%, and reduces Raised Dead cooldown to 20 seconds, was 25. Lich Robes now reduces the cooldown of Lichborn by 4 seconds, it was 10. Sorry about that. Force Pull has been renamed Death Hook and has an additional effect. Causes Death Grip to instead pull you to the target. Pheromones is now uncommon rarity, and Deathlord's Lesson, Deathlord's Legacy, and animate armaments have been removed. For Demon Hunter, Sword Stone now heals for 6% per second. It used to be 3. Shifting Signet now reduces the Metamorphosis cooldown by 30%. It was... by 2%. Shifting Signet now reduces the cooldown. Now reduces the Metamorphosis cooldown by 30%. Was 15. Stacks up to 3 times. Was 4. Phantasmal Iris damage increased by 5%. It was 1. Seeker's Rage now increases the damage of your Demon Blades, Demon Bites, or Shear by 2% per stack. It was 20%. When destroying an Ashen Phylactery, and the effect is no longer consumed when casting Demon Blades, Demon Bite, or Shear. Rage Hoof now reduces the damage, the cooldown of Metamorphosis by 6 seconds when killing a Maw Rat. Fury Wing no longer deals damage if to you Fell Rush or Infernal Strike fail to deal damage. And Sacrificing Soul Ash now properly increases the damage of Elysian Decree, so that's the curing ability. For Druid, they fixed an issue that rarely caused Druids to remain in a stunned state if they died while inside Pod Tender, the Dreamweaver Soulbind. Hunter, Bag of Marat Eyes can no longer be overwritten by a shorter duration, self-cast of Bestial Wrath, and they fixed an issue that caused Fogged Crystal and Amplifying Mirror to sometimes remain active once Misdirection has expired. For Mage, some new anima powers, so Gravity Dynamo. So knocking, rooting, and incapacitating enemies grants you 50% extra damage to fire. Arcane and Frost spells for 8 seconds. New anima power, so Chronomancer's Hourglass. During Alter Time, you and your mirror images gain Time Warp. They also added Sorcerer's Frozen Soul. Ice Block has no cooldown. Incanter's Ward. Damage absorbed by your bearers grant up to 20% increased intellect based on the amount absorbed. Eldrick's Teachings, Pyroblast, Flurry, and Arcane Barrage damage increased by 25%. Another one is Dimensional Blade now refreshes your blink cooldown when blinking through an enemy, and blinking through Maw Rats will kill them instantly. Sapphire Prism now summons 2 additional mirror images per stack. It used to be 1 and is now a common rarity. Creeping Freeze now functions without Everworn socks and can now be acquired at any time. Lingering Torments increases damage of Mirror of Torments by 50%, so that's pretty big. It used to be 10%. Malevolence, so the Ventir now causes Mirror of Torments cooldown to reset if the target dies while effective. It was used to be if the mirror had the killing blow. Maldo's Enchanted Cane, Polymorbid Rat Liver, Tome of Zumancy, and Luring Cheese have been removed. For Priests, new power, Dark Technique. Enemies affected by Mind Bob or Psychic Scream suffer 5% of your health and damage every 1 second. This damage cannot break Mind Bomb or Psychic Scream. Void Wrath Signet. Killing an enemy with Shadow Word Death summons a Void Wrath Guardian for 1 minute that casts Void Flay, dealing 100% additional damage against enemies that are above 50%. Soul of Archon, so this is rare. Power Infusion now also increases all periodic damage and healing by 100%. Cowl of Influence, you can now control your character during mind control, but it has a 30-second cooldown. Light Infused Egg, Smite and Mind Flay have a 15% and 5% chance to grant you Power Infusion. Another one is Fallen Priest Blessing, casting Holy Fire or Mind Blast increases the damage of your healing or increases the damage or healing of your next Devouring Plague by 30%, Penance or by 30, or Chastise by 60. And this affects stacks, but its duration is not refreshed. Enduring Spirit Shell duration increased by 80%. It used to be 50. Puppet Master Strings can no longer be offered to the player unless Cowl of Influence is known. Earworm, chance to trigger increased to 5% per stack. It used to be 3%. Mind Mancer's Hand Gloves now increase the damage of Mind Gains by 20%. It was reduced cast speed. Vandal's Zeal can now be obtained 3 times. It used to be obtained once. Psychic Wallet, Soul Sapper, and Art of Phantasmal Healing have been removed. Cathartic now properly triggers from Shadow Word Pain, cast by Vampiric Touch through the Shadow Talent Misery. For Rogue, fix an issue that caused Silent Footpads, now increases the Rogue's melee damage. Silent Footpads can now be activated from Stealth through Vanish. So I'm going to pause here. Shaman, the new anima power, so they have a new anima power, depleted Telsa coil. So gain the effects of Stormkeeper every 15 seconds. Pure Elemental Chord, so this is rare, increases the duration of your Fire Elemental or Storm Elemental by 50%. Increases the duration of Feral Spirits by 100 for enhancement. When you drop Spirit Link Totem, immediately heal all allies for 15% of their maximum health, and harm all enemies in the radius for 15% of their maximum health. And it stacks up to 2 times. Battle of Swirling Maelstrom increases Earthquake and Earthshock damage for Elemental, increases Maelstrom weapon bonus and damage for enhancement, and periodically deals nature damage to enemies inside of your healing range for resto. Storm Conduit now increases nature and frost damage by 50%. The Tsunami Relic now increases healing done by 50%. Also, we have Blood of Hero now causes your first Bloodlust or Heroism per floor to not incur its cooldown, and it's a rarity. Deathseer Choker damage and healing per totem increased by 10%. It was 5. Heart of the Deathseer has been redesigned. Chain Lightning hits 3 additional targets and damage increases by 20% per jump for Elemental and Restoration. Lava Lash now spreads Flame Shock to 5 nearby targets, and Lava Lash damage increased by 500%. And they removed Ghost Bone and Shield of Spirits. For Warlock, Detonation Torch has been redesigned, increases Shadow Bolt, Drain Soul, Demonic Core, and Incinerate damage by 75% per stack, and you can stack that 3 times. Inferno Skirus has been redesigned, increases the damage of Cedar Corruption, Implosion, and Rain of Fire by 75%, and it stacks up to 4 times. Pact of Thickness now increases Summon Demon's health and damage by 50%. Smoking Shard of Teleportation buff duration increased to 15 seconds. Bottled Shadow duration increased to 30 seconds. And Visage of Lethality has been redesigned. When you are struck in melee by an auto attack, you fear all nearby enemies for 8 seconds, and that can happen only once every 45. And they removed Hellfire Pact and Crystal of Perpetual Displacement. For Warrior, they've added Glory of Skyhold, so Heroic Leap gains 2 additional charges, and you can get that once. Blade of the Tide Scorn. You yell Demoralizing Shout if you're Prot, or Piercing Howl if you're Army or Fury. And when you land your Heroic Leap, you can obtain this one time. Repulsive Pendant now deals damage to all enemies within 15 yards of you every 3 seconds while Conqueror Banners is active. And you can get that twice. It used to be 3 times. They also added Weathered Runestone. Berserker Rage increases the damage of Overpower, Raging Blow, or Revenge by 40%. Can be obtained 3 times. Thorium Hairpin. Whirlwind generates 10 Rage for Arms and Prot, and 4 additional Rage for Fury, and you can get that 3 times. Gargoyle Mars Shattered Hand. Victory Rush reduces the cooldown of Heroic Leap by 10 seconds. You can get that up to 3 times. Ancient Rebel. Heroic Leap shatters the ground where you land, dealing physical damage over 10 seconds to enemies within 16 yards, and you can get that over up to 4 times. Brawler's Brass Knuckles increases Rage Regen by 25%. You can obtain that 4 times. It used to be 5. Edge of Hatred increases the damage of Rampage, Mortal Strike, and Shield Slam by 25. Used to be 20, and you can get that 4 times. It used to be 5. Fan of Longsword's chance to cast Whirlwind increased to 100%. It used to be 33. You can get that 1 time. Succulent Carbasio now also reduces the cooldown of Ignore Pain by 3 seconds for Arms and Fury. It doesn't change for Prot. Voracious Culling Blade increases Condemn, the Ventier ability, damage by 50%. It used to be 100. Smoldering Inertia damage bonus decreased to 100%. It was 200%, and the duration increased to 6 seconds, was 4 seconds. And lastly, Spattered Souls, Rage Mote, and Champion's Decree were removed. Then we have one last thing here. So in the WoW Companion app, so they changed the expansion select button action to a tap and added a button to switch expansions in the menu. They received feedback that players were having trouble remembering the expansion switch tutorial, so we simplified the action and they added a second way to switch expansions. Clarified the region and character select flow. They changed the flow based on feedback to help clarify and resolve the wrong region being selected versus having no characters in a region. They also fixed an issue where news articles didn't show content when the phone's language did not match the article's language. And they fixed an issue with duplicate missions and callings. And they made various updates to adventures. So that is pretty long. There's a lot of stuff in there, but it's pretty interesting to say the least. The big things that I'm taking away from this is that the raid is now cross-realm, and you can do Mythics cross-realm with everybody. I think the PvP has changed a little bit here. Like for me, most noticeably, it was just the stealth things that I read out, where there was a lot of mechanics that were unnecessarily bringing characters out of stealth. So there's that. The healing has been balanced, where now all healers are kind of on the same plane as paladins were for retaining their mana, or rather they're making paladins more even on that regard and increasing the mana regen of some others. All in all, there's a lot of changes. This was a lot to go through. It'll be interesting to see the next part of the expansion here. The Valor system that they're adding in for the Mythic Plus is going to be interesting, so that'll help out a lot of people who just do the Mythic Pluses and don't raid. It'll put them more on an even ground with those that also got to do the M Pluses using raid gear. I think it's long overdue. They probably should have had this at the start, so I'm looking forward to it because I'll definitely be benefiting from it. So that's been a lot of talking for me. There's a lot to cover. I hope you have enjoyed what I have went over with you today and the additional insights that I was able to share about some things as we read them out. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Have a great day.